Okay, everybody should have received an announcement that that it's recording. So I want to say, so I put the SSO requirement because I thought that that would be a safe thing, but I think I can take it off in the future if it creates too many problems. I probably should have asked you guys about that. Okay, anyway, hello everybody. My name is Nicole Berry, and I am coming to you from Burnaby Mountain, which is unceded and traditional territories of Coast Salish, so Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples. I actually live on Burnaby Mountain also. I joined the Faculty of Health Sciences around the same time that Dr. Venners did in the beginning of 2008. I am an anthropologist by training. I'm a medical anthropologist by training, and my research looks at international policies in reproductive health, centered around trying to change gynecological and obstetric outcomes. So I've done a lot of things on maternal mortality and attempts to do gynecological surgeries. I work in a field site, and I have worked in a field site for the last 20 years in Guatemala. And Guatemala is a ethnically diverse country. So there's a lot of interest in my work in trying to understand how policies that are made in places like Geneva or New York actually get implemented in the lives of people who the policymakers have never met whatsoever. So that tells you a little bit about me. I'm really excited to be working on this class with my colleagues. This is the first class that I've ever co-taught with people. We tried it last semester. This is our second semester. So I've learned a lot from working with them, and I'm excited about this opportunity again. And I just wanted to take a moment to say to you guys, I think it's a real luxury to some extent to have 3 different instructors who are paying attention to you. And I think that one of the nice things is that you're going to get different sorts of perspectives from us, because we do all have different backgrounds and trainings and academic backgrounds. And hopefully that's going to enrich your learning experience. So Scott, can we check in and see where we are with the getting in?
So I sent I sent out a message through Canvas, which should get pushed out to email. So hopefully that will work. So we'll see if any more messages come in. There's no way for us to turn off the SSO requirement, is there? Probably.
I don't know if we can do it in the middle of doing it here.
Okay. All right. Well, let's live and learn.
Okay.
I guess I'll go forward. So yeah, so for introducing myself, so yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. My background is, as we've said, is a little bit different. So I actually started out, my undergraduate training was in electrical engineering, and then I took a big gap between my undergraduate and my graduate training. I took 8 years off, and I decided to move into public health after that. And my first step was actually a master's degree in public health. I focused on international health and development with a sort of a specialization in program monitoring and evaluation. So that was kind of, program monitoring and evaluation is sort of using research to evaluate whether, programs are effective or not. But then I went on and did a PhD. I was actually interested in environmental issues at that time. So from my Master's of Public Health, I did my PhD in environmental health. And that was where I worked for quite a while. In 2013, I made another shift. So I moved from environmental health to working in indigenous health. And so for me, I'm very much sort of research oriented, more than policy oriented, but I overlap with policymakers quite a bit in my work. So, the work that I do in indigenous health is in partnership with indigenous organizations. So I'm working with 3 organizations. One is the New Chalmers Tribal Council. New Chalmers Tribal Council provides programs and services, health programs and services to 14 New Chalmers nations on Vancouver Island. So with them, I'm working on some COVID-19 vaccine research, looking at how well the vaccines are working to protect them against SARS-2 infection. And then we're also working on a kind of project looking at looking at sort of early life health and sort of effects on later life development and later life chronic disease. So that's one partner. Another partner I work with is the First Nations Health Authority. And it's there really where I probably overlap the most with policymakers. And we use a kind of research approach, which is called integrated knowledge translation. And so the idea with integrated knowledge translation is that you actually work directly with policy decision makers, and you bring them into the research process, and they're involved in every step of the process along the way. And one of the ideas is to make the evidence that comes from the research be particularly relevant for policymaking. And so that's one of the ways that that's probably where I see most directly the interface between the evidence that we create through research with actually policy making. And then my third partner is the Vancouver Aboriginal Health Society. That's in the Vancouver downtown east side. So it's a not-for-profit society. It's been in the downtown east side for 30 some years. And it provides a lot of different services, some related to health, many related to health, and others they have other kinds of programs as well. They have like an early life, or like a early life childhood education program, those kinds of things as well. And so that's another context in which I'm working. So one of the things I'll be talking about this semester is policy in the downtown east side related to safe drug supply and harm reduction with around drug use. Anyways, that's a little bit about it. I'll stop there. So Kelly and Nicole, is there anything else that you would like to add before we go on to the next thing? Nicole, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. I'm going to put another announcement in because we've gotten I have a page, the IT page for how to log into the SSO, and other people are saying that they logged into SSO and then were able to use the information about our meeting. So I'm going to go write another announcement on that while you move on to the next section.
Thank you for handling that.
Oh, lots of people are getting in.
Okay. Okay, so maybe we'll go to the next thing then. Does that sound okay, Kelly?
That sounds great, Scott. I didn't say much about my own research, which is actually used to be on tobacco control. So we're going to talk a little bit about vaping later on, so I can say a little bit more when we come up to that in the course. And also my work on COVID-19, which is around travel measures. So that's been quite a challenging policy area as well. So I'll try and draw on those lessons. But no, I think we can move on to the course. I think we've got a good substantial number of people still coming in. So we're up to 100 almost. So go ahead, Scott.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and do that. So the next thing I like to do is I would just like to give you kind of an overview of the course. And also we'll look at the Canvas site, give you an orientation to that. So, I'll start out talking about the course, and I'll let Kelly and Nicole add things that I miss and things they would like to emphasize. So one of the things about this course is one of the major activities that we're going to be doing is learning to write what's called a policy brief. And Nicole is going to, after I finish this portion, she's going to talk more specifically about the assignments in this course. But sort of in a general sense, a policy brief is used to deploy evidence strategically to shape conversations and actions by those with authority to set policy. And so the policy brief is one tool to influence decision makers and shape both societal goals and policy actions towards those goals. So we're going to learn about how to write a policy brief. And having this skill can be useful for your future work. It's also, you can probably also use this policy brief that you write this term as an example of your professional writing ability when you apply for jobs in the future or when you apply to graduate school, one benefit you can have. So we're going to be working on that through the entire semester. And we'll be doing it in stages. And the final assignment is the completed policy brief that you will choose. So that you will create. So thinking about the course kind of from a high level view, there's sort of I would say there are three major aspects to the course. One aspect is public health policy as a topic in itself. So we're going to be talking about things like what is public policy, what's the scope of evidence that is used in public health policy, what other things besides evidence are used in public health policy, thinking about stakeholders, how do you map stakeholders, how do you align the work that you're doing with your stakeholders, how do you evaluate different kinds of policy options, and some other kinds of things. So you can look in the learning objectives of the course, and I'll show you where those are soon, to sort of see all of the different things that we're going to be talking about this term in terms of public health policy as a topic in itself. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is we're going to be sort of taking a deeper dive and a closer look at specific topics in public health policy. And we're going to be looking at three of them. One of them is that we're going to be looking at carbon emissions policy at the provincial and national levels. A second one is we're going to be looking at vaping policy at provincial and national levels. And the third one is we're going to be looking at safe drug supply in the downtown east side at a Vancouver municipal level. So we will be spending 1 week, weeks 2, 3, and 4, 1 week per each of those topics. And so we'll have a deeper dive into both of those. So that's kind of the second one. So we have public health policy in general. We have 3 specific topics within public health policy. We're going to do a deeper dive. And then the third part is what we've already mentioned, which is the writing of the policy brief. And so we're going to be, sort of unfolding that step by step over the term, sort of breaking it down, the components of it, thinking about each of the components maybe individually, and then thinking how they link up, and many other things. So there's many kinds of things you have to think of simultaneously to write an effective policy brief. And we've set out the course in a way that will sort of take you through it in a step-by-step way that you'll be able to have a really strong, successful policy brief by the end of the term. So there's a few things that we're going to be looking at specifically in this area, in this portion. One is looking in a more general way, just looking at, we want to really focus on thinking about structure in writing. So we hope that by making, transparent and clear how, one thinks about the structure of writing, that can make you better writers in general for the policy brief, but also in general. Another thing we're going to be looking at is what we call a problem tree analysis. And problem tree analysis is really a way of breaking down an issue into its components in terms of causality. What are the things, you have some kind of issue, some kind of problem, perhaps you're conceptualizing it as a problem. What are the things that sort of lead to that? What are the causes that lead to that? And what are the consequences of that? And so we're going to kind of create almost like a causal map that we're calling a problem tree analysis. And it'll be really helpful for us to think about where in that map we're actually focusing our policy, because it has implications for the kinds of things we propose and how we go about talking about those things and proposing them. So another thing we're going to focus on is we're going to focus on how you can effectively use evidence to support the kind of arguments that you're making. We're going to sort of like take a deep dive into like using evidence to support the claims that you're making. And we're going to look at it at a kind of framework for thinking about evidence, which we call claims, evidence, and warrants. And so we're going to be asking you to sort of make very explicit the arguments you're making and make very explicit the structure of the arguments you're making. And hopefully by doing that, what it'll do is you'll be able to sort of like carry forward after this class that way of thinking about your writing, and you'll be better writers because of it. And then another thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at like how one can go about searching for evidence in academic literature, grade literature, and how to choose credible resources from that to make your arguments seem stronger because of the quality of the evidence that you're using to make those kinds of arguments that you're making. So another thing we're doing is very exciting. We're going to have some expert guests coming to our class. So specifically in the 3 weeks where we're diving into each of those topics, we're going to have some guest speakers. So one, we're going to have Tom Gunter. Is that how you pronounce his name, Nicole? Gunter?
I think it's Gunton.
Gunton, oh sorry.
I haven't spoken with him, but yes.
I apologize. So Gunton. So anyways, Tom Gunton, he's a professor at SFU. He's the director of Resource and Environmental Planning Program. He's going to be talking about policies related to carbon emissions. Our second expert is our own Kelly Lee. she is going to be here in the second week, or the third week rather. She's going to be talking about public health policies on the issue of vaping. And then the third guest who we'll have, or the second guest, I guess, the third person who we'll have is Jean Swanson, who is a Vancouver City Councillor. Councillor Swanson will be coming in week 4. And she's going to be talking about policy related to safe drug supply in Vancouver's downtown east side. So in week 11, in addition, we're going to be having a panel discussion. We're going to have a panel of policy analysts and advocates coming. And the idea is we hope that we will learn about the practical challenges that they face in the work that they do in the policy domain. So, so that's kind of an overview of what we're doing. I hope it sounds exciting to you. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be great. I think what I want to do next is I just want to, actually, I'll ask Nicole and Kelly if you want to add anything else before I launch into the Canvas site.
Yeah, that's a great overview, Scott. Thank you. And as you'll see, it's going to be a busy term, but you can see that it'll be a lot of variety as well, so that you can both hear from people who do this sort of work, but also importantly, practice it yourself. And so by the end, the idea is that you'd come away with a really good set of practical skills on how to do policy analysis. And these are very transferable skills that you could take in into a lot of areas of your work, wherever you're going to end up once you graduate from SFU and beyond. And that was the idea behind this course. Nick asked a really good question on chat, was this an upper level course? We did debate about this, whether, students at upper level or lower level should take a course like this. We decided it's better to introduce this earlier on in your education, because oftentimes when we get to the point of fourth year students and they haven't had this kind of training, they find it actually quite difficult to pull together a policy brief. And in a sense, it's good to introduce these skills early on, and you can apply them as you make your journey through education and beyond into employment. So that was the thinking behind this course. And so we're trying to really put an emphasis on the pragmatic, the applied, and so allowing you to practice these skills as you go along in the course. So Scott's going to say a bit more about that, and I won't preempt that. But that's the thinking, and that's why we're bringing in guests from the real world who operate in these policy environments, how challenging it can be, but also how rewarding it can be when you can achieve a change that really impacts people's lives. And that's why we want to teach you these skills, because goodness knows we need a lot of change out there. So yeah, so that's just a bit more background really to why we put this course together the way we have, and why we've aimed it at second year students at this time. Nicole, anything else?
No, I think both of you have covered it.
Okay, great, thank you. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to talk about the Canvas course next. And so let me just prepare that. I'm going to share my screen. Share screen, where is it? There it is. Okay, can you see that? Yes, okay. All right, so here is our Canvas course. So you should all be able to log in now. So all of this should be self-explanatory. So one thing I want to let you know is just point out here is that in order to get into the modules, you have to actually first click on the syllabus, and then you have to open the syllabus, at least open it. In order to get to the modules. But since it's already open, I hope you will take the chance to go ahead and read it too. So I'm going to come back to this though first. Later, I'm going to come back to this later. I'm going to first actually show you the structure of the modules. And so one thing I would like to say is that the expectation we have is that you'll spend 8 hours a week on this course, including the time in class. So if we're in class for 3 hours, that means that there's 5 hours outside of class. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to plan that entire 8 hours. And so if you look inside each of the weeks here, so there's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, currently it's up to week 6 in assignment 2. Week 7 to 13 will be coming soon. So but let's just look at the structure of how these are. So for example, if we go into today's week, what you'll see is you'll see a little overview of what we're doing this week. You'll see the learning objectives we're trying to achieve this week. And then you'll see here actually what you should do this week. So this is basically your plan for the week. So you know exactly what you're expected to do in the 8 hours that you're going to spend in the course. And what we've done is in each one of these, we have written down how much time we think it's going to take you to complete that particular task. So this one, the introduction to the course, we've actually done this one in class already today. So that's what I just completed. Actually, we're completed now. I guess this is part of it as well. But you can still read an overview of the course. It probably will cover some things that there's a video here about the educational philosophy of the course, those kinds of things here. So you can look at those kinds of things yourself. And every week is structured in this way. So one of the things I wanted to point out is, so for not all of this material is covered in class. Part of it is reading that you should be doing after class. Some of it will be related to the things we talk about in that particular class that happened beforehand. Sometimes it will be things about that you should read in advance or do in advance to prepare for the class that's coming the next week. So this week, for example, we have some examples of the latter ones. Next week, we're going to be talking about, we're going to take a deeper dive into carbon emissions. And so down here in this week, you'll find number 7 and 8, you're going to find that there is some reading about carbon emissions that you can do in order to prepare in advance for next week's lecture. There's also next week in class, we're going to be having an in-class exercise where we're going to be, oops, I went to the week 2. Sorry, I went to the wrong week. We're going to be having an in-class exercise where we're going to be, after we listen to the our guest lecturer, and you have an opportunity to ask some questions, we're going to be doing an exercise in class where we are applying this problem tree analysis that I mentioned earlier. This is the cause and consequences kind of framework. We're going to be applying that to carbon emissions policy. And so what you should do to prepare for next week is you should go ahead and read about this framework so that you're well prepared to take part in that activity during class next week. And so basically it's very easy for you to know exactly what you're supposed to do. Your expectations are all written down step by step, and really you just have to schedule your time and do each of these before you come to the next class. That's really all that's required of you. So so that's that. So I guess I would like to also probably look at the syllabus. A few things in the syllabus. You can read the syllabus yourself. Please read the syllabus. There's important information in there. There's a few things that I wanted to highlight though. One of them was, here are the learning objectives for the course as an overview. You could read those in your own time. One of the things I wanted to highlight was, one is this one. So how do I get answers to questions about the course? So there's a pinned discussion. It is called Instructor's Office and Assignment Q&A. You will find that and you can use that for general questions about the course. I'll show you where it is. You go to announcements and you go, oops, actually, why isn't it here?
It's in discussion.
Oh, it's not discussions. Okay, thank you. So it's this one. Actually, it's called Instructor's Office. This is the one, right, Nicole? Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So if you go into the instructor's office, so if you have any kind of like general questions about the course, particularly if they could be useful for everyone to know about, this is where you can post that. So let me go back to syllabus. Another thing I wanted to point out was the issue, like the policies around late assignments. So please have a look at the policy about late assignments and how the point deductions work. So another thing you can find here is you can find the whole course has been designed week by week. You can find all of the learning objectives for the whole course inside the syllabus for the entire course. And you can see who will be coming to class, who the guests will be. You can see all of that here. Another place you can see all of the learning objectives. They're identical if you go into the modules. So the learning objectives you see week by week in the syllabus are the same learning objectives that you will see here. Now the modules only go up to week 6 right now, but if you look at the syllabus, you can see the learning objectives for the entire course. So week 7 through 13 that will be coming out soon, but for now you can see all of the learning objectives. So let's see, is there anything else that I want to? Nicole and Kelly, help me. Is there anything else I should?
Well, Tiffany had a question, Scott. She asked if the course continues to be online, meaning after the 24th of January, President Johnson does not tell us to come back to the classroom in person, will the lectures be recorded and posted? So, I mean, will there be a synchronous component if we continue to be online? That's the question.
Well, the lectures can be, oh, I see. They will continue. Well, my idea is that there will continue to be a synchronous session online. But we can, I'm fine to record my lectures and post them. But we can discuss that. Why don't we get back? We can get back.
Well, I think the question is if we end up staying online, and we just don't know at this point. Hopefully we'll be told soon. We'll record each session and we'll put that link in case people can't, we'll deliver it synchronously, some of the material, but we will record like we're doing today and provide that link so that if you can't make the class, you can listen in later on. Hopefully you will be able to make it because then you can ask questions and participate in the activities. But we'll make that commitment. I think it's just pushing that button record, isn't it? So it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so we can do that.
Okay.
So
fingers crossed. We don't know what's going to happen. So a bit unknown. Okay, and then the other thing, Scott, the reason we are asking you to put the questions on the discussion is so that everybody can see the question. Is that right? So in case anybody else had the same question, then you don't have to repeat the question and you can see other people's answers. It just helps because I think there's about 150 students on the class and we can help each other. If there's anything that's unclear, just put it public.
And then otherwise, if there are other kinds of things which are maybe more personal in nature, you can message any of us or your TAs through the Canvas. We ask you to use the Canvas messaging system to connect with us.
Okay, there's a question about textbook. There is no textbook. We looked and looked for a good textbook, and there just wasn't one that we landed on. So whatever readings we require you to do, we'll put the link, so you don't have to actually spend any money for this course. You'll have the links to the materials, and the URLs will be there, or we'll put it on Canvas or whatever. But you shouldn't need a textbook. We just kind of picked and curated materials for you to link with the different topics. So that try and make it as easy as possible. Maybe we'll need to write a textbook at some point, Scott and Nicole. I know that fills you with horror, but good BC policy analysis textbook.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that kind of completes my overview of the course. So, you can look through the Canvas site, look through the syllabus. If you have any questions, please let us know. So I think I will pass to Nicole, who's, I believe, is going to focus on the assignments now. Is that next?
Yes, so I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, because I made a PowerPoint. Here we go. Minimize you guys. Okay, so all of the information that I'm giving you is actually in the syllabus, but we wanted to give you a heads up, just like we did on the structure and overview of the course, about what are the assignments. Okay, there we go. So then you really basically have a main assignment this semester, and it's to write a policy brief of excellent quality on a public health issue, that should say. And so that is our goal for you. And that's what all of our material and all of our assignments are trying to gear you toward doing. And we do that by breaking the assignments into two different components. So one of them is what we're calling reflections that are helping you concretize your learning. So think about what you're learning and leverage that learning to improve what you're going to do in your policy brief. And then the second, which is really the bulk of the assignments, have to do with completing different parts of your brief and completing the brief itself. So there are 5 different learning reflections to look at the first thing, and those happen at different weeks, right? So I listed it here. There's one due week 2, week 3, week 4, week 11, and then the last one's called final course reflection, which happens in week 13. And you can find the learning reflections listed in the module. So as you remember, Scott just took you to the module section where we went through week 1. And I did a screen capture, and then I've taken these yellow blocks just to highlight, to show you that if you're working through modules, that's how you're accessing the course, that you will see the learning reflections there. You can also go straight into the assignments page, and there is a group of assignments that are called reflections if you put it in sort by type on the assignments page. And of course, all of these things are going to show up in your little Canvas feed about what it is that's due. But here you can see all of the different due dates. The times of the due dates are 2:30, which is right before the start of our class, except for the last one, which happens before midnight. So please note that no late learning reflections will be accepted. So go ahead. So we want you to plan ahead. I think it's a great idea to, make a time and mark that in your calendar so you know that you can get that in. Now, assignments 1, 2, and 3 are all about writing your policy brief. And we've created a basic structure for the policy brief, and you're going to turn in different parts of this structure during different assignments. And so this just gives you an overview. We don't need to understand it now, but you'll see that, like, for assignment 1, you need a title of your policy brief. For assignment 2, you're going to write an introduction and you're going to an issue, and you'll develop that. And then assignment 3 is basically the whole kit and caboodle. This is the very basic structure. So there's other things that are going to go in your complete policy brief, like, you'll need to have a summary. You probably will have some pictures or something of interest. But as you can see, our assignments are basically moving us toward that complete brief, which is what assignment number 3 is. And each of the assignments and the criteria for excellence of how you can do well on the assignments and everything that you need to do are going to be unpacked in the modules. So feel free to read them, but know that as we move through the class developmentally, when it's appropriate, we're going to be focusing in on, okay, let's look at this assignment. Let's talk about what you need to do. Let's talk about how you can do well on it. The assignment descriptions and the rubrics for 1 and 2 have been posted under assignments. And the description for assignment 3 is forthcoming. So assignment 3 is the one where we have the whole brief. You can also find this chart in your syllabus, which is talking about assignment values and due dates. So you can see right here that we have assignment 1, 2, and 3, as we just reviewed, and that we have the reflection assignment. So assignment number 1 is worth 10 points to 34. The final brief is worth 46 of the total 100 marks, and then 10 points, 2 points each for your reflection assignments. And I think that is it for me. We do have a little activity before we move forward, but I wanted to make sure that there's not any questions that people have about this before we move forward, or if Scott and Kelly want to add something.
Maybe that's a question. So basically all the assignments are about, she puts in only one policy brief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It is, but it's not, but the policy brief has to be very good. So that it sounds like one assignment overall, but actually there's a lot of work that goes into a very good policy brief. So we've broken it up. So it's more work than you think, but we want to make sure you produce something that you could actually hand to a policymaker by the end of this course, which would be a great achievement.
And I feel like Scott said we're in these two different tracks, but we really consider this a really complex assignment. So I would go back to that question that Nick asked that Kelly addressed, like, was this ever an upper level course? We actually consider writing a publishable policy brief to be a task that would normally be considered above the level of 200 level university students. So this is actually asking you to go above and beyond, but we have worked really hard to try to break it down step by step and to tutor you through each of these steps so that in the end, you're going to be able to do this. But even in 13 weeks, this is a heavy lift.
Nicole Piper asked a really good question. Can you see it on the chat?
Oh, I have
about correcting and improving, and maybe even Scott who can answer that, because that is a very core part of this course.
Yes. So yeah, thank you. It's a really great question, Piper. Thank you for that. Yes. So the answer to the question is, will we be able to apply the corrections and suggestions from the markings on the first two assignments to the final assessment? And the answer is yes. You're encouraged to do that. So, we hope that you will be, writing at a professional level of writing, a level of writing that is suitable for the professional field of practice. And in the real world, the way writing happens is through many revisions. When the three of us write things, we write through multiple drafts, and you should be writing through multiple drafts. And you should be seeking out to get feedback from others on your writing, if that's possible, and incorporating that into multiple drafts. So absolutely, the corrections and suggestions from the markings that you get when you turn in the first two assignments, definitely you want to incorporate those into the final assignment.
I would actually go a step farther and say that there's some things you would not be able to progress. So for example, if you have not adequately identified an issue to write your policy brief on at the end of assignment 1, you can't go on to assignment 2. So when we give you feedback on the assignments, and we're going to be working with the TAs to try to get a 2-week turnaround so that you can have quick access to this feedback. But there are going to be sections where if you actually did not achieve that in the assignment, you're going to need to achieve it before you're able to move forward, precisely because this is a cumulative exercise. So it's not like we're doing extraneous things in assignment 1 or in assignment 2. And so there's certain things that you need to have in a policy brief to kind of march us forward toward those recommendations. And if there's things that you just, left out or are on the wayside, the whole thing won't be able to come together. So we will definitely give you feedback that says, you need to do this in order to move forward. Hopefully you'll be in the box that says, great try, here's how I would improve this, right? Instead of, sorry, you don't have an issue, you've got to redo that part. So yeah, we really do see this as iterative and building, and we see this as multiple drafts, and we see this as you guys taking our feedback and using that to improve the drafts.
So Nicole, the next question is, can we also ask for help during all the assignments process? You want to take that one?
Oh, sorry, I'm every time I touch my screen. So yes, you can ask for help. And so we encourage you actually to ask for help. And so we will be, as we said, we've taken this very complex task and we've tried to chunk it, right, into really sorts of bite-sized pieces. And so when someone said, well, can you just post the lectures? We will certainly record what happens in class, but what we're going to be doing a lot of the time is going to be small targeted exercises where we have told you about a skill or we've told you about something we want you to do, and then we practice it in class, right? So that's one of the areas where you're going to be able to get feedback, not only on what you do, but by learning what your peers do. So I think it's really important to participate in that, because I think, I definitely have the experience of seeing something and I can understand it, but I don't know until I try that I actually can't implement it. And I have to try a couple times and fail to be able to learn it and implement it. And so what we want is we want to give you that sort of practice so that you've got the feedback and you know what's required. to doing your own work. Because obviously we're not going to be able to pre-read 146 assignments every single time, right? But what we want is we want you to be asking questions. Where we have boards, assignment boards in our discussion where you're going to be asking sorts of general questions. And we have really using those learning goals in our modules, broken down what you need to do to produce your assignment. And we have lots of exercises that we've tried to structure that we'll be able to work with you on during our synchronous time.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, but one of the things that either you or Scott are going to do is look at previous efforts by students to write policy briefs and, get this year's students to critique some of the parts of those. And so you can recognize what could be strengthened, what they did well, and then apply it to your work. Is that did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so last year's students were incredibly generous in allowing us permission to use their work. And so what we're going to do is we'll either directly use work or we've mocked it up a little bit so that it's very clear what would be a good example and what would not be a good example to try to provide that contrast, because it's a lot easier for us to work from actually produced work than it is to just totally make it up. So yes, our exercises have really draw on attempts that students have made, usually in their earlier iterations of this class when they're like just struggling to try to figure out what they were going to do. And I think it's important to also foreshadow that though we are working on 3 different topic areas this time, the last iteration of this class, it was open. So you'll get to see policy briefs that are on a lot of different issues, not just the 3 issues that we're talking about in class.
And can I ask also, and just for my own clarity, is what if a student doesn't quite meet the standard for, say, assignment 1, how do they know when they have so that they can progress to assignment 2? So they say they've got feedback and they tried again and revised. So how would that work?
So we actually haven't talked about this, but my advice is to come to office hours. So we will be having office hours and the TAs are going to be having office hours. And I think it's really important, particularly if you didn't meet the mark on assignment number 1 or assignment number 2, meaning you have been given feedback that says you can't move forward until you address this issue. I would say that if the student doesn't understand what it is they haven't done, then they need to come immediately. But if they understand what the difference is, then they need to try to fix it and then talk to us. Because I think it would be very frustrating to get that feedback and to try your fix and then move forward and find out that your fix didn't work. So we're going to be scheduling office hours, which you can find through the Google or through the Canvas calendar up there. And so you will be able to talk to us about feedback you get, but I would particularly star and say, if you get feedback that says you can't move forward, that you should talk to us before you move forward.
Any other questions out there is that clear? I guess until you get into it, you know, there'll probably be more questions later on, but that gives you a sense of what we're trying to achieve, get you to go through the 3 assignments so that by the end you can produce a really good quality policy brief. So how do the marks work? Sorry, I should have discussed this with you guys before the course, but so, you know, you get assignment 1 done and you get, I don't know, not quite the mark you wanted, so you fix it. Will the mark change or will that just stay the same?
So the mark for assignment 1, once it's been assessed, stays the same.
Yeah.
So we do not have resources, TA or TM resources, to be able to remark 146 assignments 3 times. That is, you know, the way that we operate is we operate through a contract where the TAs are given a contract for a certain number of hours. And that does not include remarking the same assignment. So you got what you got on that assignment, and then we move forward and try to do better on the next assignment.
But I would add to that, I mean, this course might be a little bit different than other courses in that, you know, in other courses, sometimes the assignments are kind of like exams almost, right? And so, you know, there are rules around, you know, you can't have notes, you can't do these other kinds of things while taking an exam. These assignments are different. So I would say that, you know, you should really I think a good strategy for this course, one is start early and plan to write through multiple drafts, each of the assignments, and take advantage of office hours, right? So if you come to office hours, you can talk about the work you're doing. You can talk about, the struggles you're having with the assignment, talk about what you're planning. Does it sound good? All of those kinds of questions, all of that is fair. And so I would say that's the really good strategy is to utilize the office hours.
So I see Shannon put another question and she says, are policy briefs limited to the topics covered within the course, or can we choose any topic of our interest? So policy briefs are covered to the topics within the course. And that is something that we changed this year. And we basically changed it because, as we said, there's so much to learn about how to move forward that we realized that it was difficult for a lot of people to find their topics, find their issues, and then learn enough about them independently. So we wanted to consolidate that because you are going to be learning a lot more about research and how to find topics, et cetera, in other courses. So we had a large part of that, but we realized we needed to roll back something, and we decided that it would be better for us to all come together and get on the same page through the lectures that we're going to have in weeks 2, 3, and 4 that are really about, provincial or municipal policy in a certain area. So that saves you having to figure out the environment of what's going on. And through our problem tree analysis, we're all going to have a basic background when we finish those 3 classes in those 3 areas. And so that's going to clear the way for you to really drill down and spend your time on thinking about how you are going to present your issue, choosing the policy approach that you're going to choose, evaluating the different policy recommendations that you're going to have, and elaborating that. So we are not just open to any policies. Any other questions?
Luigi's got a question.
Okay. It says the syllabus mentions office hours are by appointment, and who in particular should we message through Canvas, or will the schedule be released? So the schedule will be released. We will add our office hours into the calendar, and you can just go in and sign up for office hours there. I think it's also saying you can contact us if there's something particular that you need to talk to us about.
And we're dividing up the office hours. So there'll be we're almost like on call. So each week, so there'll be different, there'll be one of us on office hours each week. So you just need to sign up for the right week, I think, depending on your question.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to move on then from the assignments and talk about, no, I can't make it go. No, okay, talk about small groups. You are going to be divided. You have randomly been divided into small groups through our Canvas. We asked it to just randomly generate different groups, and I think we generated 27 small groups with 5 or 6 people per group. So we have put you into small groups because, as we said, as we move through our synchronous components, we're going to be doing work, like activity work, and we can't do that with 146 people together raising their hands. So what we want to do is we want to give you spaces and breakout rooms to work on the problems together, and then we will bring everybody back, and then we'll be able to share what we did in debrief. And the second reason we're putting you into small groups, actually, I think there's 3. Scott also said, we really want you to do well. And so the assignments are not necessarily, they are not exam type assignments. Your fellow person who's in the class might be a good person to talk to and say, hey, can you understand what my issue is? And since we're not together, it's going to be very difficult to meet people, especially the first couple of weeks. And so hopefully small groups are going to facilitate that element of peer support that you might need in order to move forward in the class and not feel, totally overwhelmed and alone by what's going on here. And the third thing is, if we do get back into the classroom, I guess everybody got President Johnson's announcement today, but one of the things they mentioned is anyway, there's new conditions, and we just think it's a lot better to have people sitting in the same place in their small groups every single week than mixing up 146 people every week. So at least you'll always know who you're around and who was around you. And, if we end up having some COVID issues within the classroom, I think it's a lot easier to keep people sitting in the same places so that we can let each other know and, try to keep each other safe. So that's our reasons for doing the small groups. I have preloaded you into your small group. So if you were to go on Canvas, you would be able to see under people, I believe, what group you've been assigned to, but your small group has a number 1 through 27. And that is going to be the people you're going to be with throughout the semester. So in a moment, we are going to put you into your breakout rooms for 15 minutes. And while you're there, we would ask you to just introduce yourself to the other people in your breakout room. Let us know, or let the other people in your breakout room know where you're zooming in from. Tell them your major and your year. And then what's something that you love that almost everyone hates? So that's your prompt question. So unless there's any questions, I am going to get out of sharing and put you into rooms.
We're going to fix that doorbell, Scott. Okay, so I hope you guys had a nice time just getting to know each other. You'll be working in those groups for the rest of the term. So that's so I think that's a really good way of, I guess, making this more personal, despite the weird Zoom dynamics. For the rest of this time we have together, in ideal times, I'd be giving a lecture at this point, but unfortunately, I'm still recovering from COVID, actually, and so I am not able to speak for an hour, nonstop, without coughing and so on. So what I've done is I've provided you with a recorded lecture, which you should go away now and review the materials on the course, but also listen to that recorded lecture. And the lecture also has the text of the what I'm saying. So if you don't want to listen to my voice, you can instead read the notes at the bottom of the slides. But if you click through, you can listen in. The key thing about this lecture, it really sort of kicks off the course in defining a lot of the key terms that you're going to be using. For example, what is a policy? That seems really obvious, but it's really important that you're very clear about what that concept means and what a policy is versus a decision versus an intervention. Those are key things that you need to kind of really understand and be clear in your mind. What is a public policy? What is public versus, say, a private company adopting policy? So that's very important to understand as well. And it really just takes you through, why policy is important, what its role is in a society, and then how I guess it is carried out and why it's important in terms of how we operate as a society, as any society. Policy really underpins that. So that'll take you about, I guess, 45 minutes to an hour, depending how quickly you click through or read. And then, that will set you up very nicely for really thinking about going into the first of the 3 topics that we're going to cover. And you can apply some of those concepts when you're listening to those lectures. So you need to do that before next week, as well as look at the material that Scott took us through on Canvas. And so that you're familiar with the structure of the course, the syllabus, and also how we're going to unfold, how the course is going to unfold for you. So really, that's it. We're going to have a full 3 hours next week and onwards. It's just today that I'm just struggling with keeping up with with speaking. So is there any questions for that for the rest of the today, for the rest of the week? So there's lots of different stuff you can get your teeth into. By next week, you'll be raring to go in terms of the basic concepts and so on.
I can also show where the lecture is, and so this is the week 1.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And if you click on what is public policy, and you go into here, you'll find the PowerPoint lecture is here. You can see it.
There it is. Yeah.
And there's other things here. So you should go through all of these things. And then there's also these other things: purpose of a policy brief, policy making, research and evidence, roles of the policy analysts in policy briefs, technical versus political expertise in policy analysis. So that's for this week's lecture related. And then also there's to prepare for next week. You have this about reducing carbon emissions. So this is reading materials to prepare. Remember, we have a guest lecture coming next week. And then also prepare for the problem tree analysis that we're going to be doing in class next week. So you can read through this. So like we said, we expect that each week, including the class time, we expect you to be spending about 8 hours on this class. So you can budget your time that way. So I think I'll stop sharing.
Okay, so we just let everyone get on then with the materials. Usually we would meet till 5:30, so we'll definitely have a break during that time. That's a long time to sit on Zoom. And even in class, we'll have a break as well, so we can stretch our legs, grab a coffee or whatever. Okay, all right, and we'll let you know we'll look out for any emails about in class versus online, and we will try and pivot accordingly. As you can imagine, we've been scrambling to get things online, and then we don't know what's going to happen. So we apologize for being a little bit late in putting materials up this morning, but we assure you that we're ready to pivot again if the call goes out. So
thank you for all your thank yous.
Good to meet you guys, and really hope to see you in person at some point in the near future. Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye for
Bye,
now.
everybody. Thanks.